I think we can kick it off. There are some people joining still, but yeah, I will approve them on the way. Recording is started. Everything is great. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And thanks for joining our CKAN Monthly Live number 22. This is our first meetup for 2020. Did I say? Yes, 2024. This is our first meetup for 2024. And today we're gonna kick off with a deep dive into a cool new feature for CKAN. It's called TableDesigner. And it helps us manage data in a new way. Now we have here on the call, Ian, let me switch. Yes. We have here on the call Ian Ward, who we all know very well. Admit. That's Kate. Hey, Kate, nice to see you here. Yeah, we all know him as CKAN Tech Team Lead at CKAN Project. He has experience with CKAN for more than 20 years. Apart from that, he is a software developer at, what? No, you say no?
Not 20 years, no.
I said 10.
No, I've had, yeah, make like 10, something like 10.
My numbers today are a bit mixed. So 10, I wanted to say 10 years, 10 plus years. Maybe
yeah, Edric has got more years than me on CKAN, so he's the real expert.
Okay, cool. Well, yes, agree. Yeah, apart from tech team lead, he's also software developer at Open Canada. And he will be joined by Patrick Little, who is data analytics lead, and he's working all things open data within the government of Canada. So here is what's lined up for today. So we have introduction, which is 10 minutes. This is me right now. After that, we are going to have a presentation from Ian and Patrick. Then we'll open the floor for some discussion and Q&A session. After that, we can have some community announcements and sharing. Maybe you can share what's up in 2024. If you have something to share, this is the time. Don't be ashamed. And then we have some closing remarks. Now, I'm not sure if I pasted the meeting document. It's in the calendar invitation, but I will drop a link in the chat right after I finish my introduction. This is our single source of truth document. You can find many links there. You can also open the meeting notes. At the beginning, you have some field where you can put your name, affiliation, what brings you to CKAN. Then you can drop things for some ideas for future meetups, or you can add some things to the agenda, basically up to you. Yeah, we're here to connect, so any useful information will be highly appreciated. Still people joining, I'm admitting them. There are two ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and go ahead, or you can drop your questions in the chat. Ideally, we'll wait for the Q&A session so that we are not interrupting the speakers. Yeah, but generally, questions are highly appreciated. Like, we are here to learn and share. We are a big, nice community. There is no bad question or dumb question, so don't hesitate to jump in with questions. And before I give the mic to Ian and Patrick, oh no, I have something more. Sorry, I was about to say that the meeting is being recorded. I'll say that again. But we have a CKAN monthly newsletter. If you would like to subscribe, you can do it via the link in this presentation. I'm going to drop a link after my intro. And also you can subscribe in LinkedIn, and that will ensure that you receive it every month. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it. Remember, the session is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And with that said, let's welcome Ian and Patrick. Please let me know if you can share your screens. And I'll stop presenting.
Oh, can't hear you, Pat.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Let me just share the screen. Can you? Oh, it's just loading now.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. So very excited to be here today to talk about TableDesigner. For anyone who attended the Canadian Open Data Summit, I guess almost 2 months ago now, you'll notice that a lot of the slides might be familiar. Trying to, repurpose the great deck that Ian did at the presentation for today's session, with a little bit of new content. So, getting into it, I think for today, maybe even skip over the introduction slightly because Joanna did a great job of introducing us, but give a little bit of background on the Open Government Portal, which is the Government of Canada's, CKAN that we're talking about today. Talk about some of the business drivers behind why TableDesigner was developed. Do a live demo, God forbid. If not, we'll revert back to some images in the slide deck, and then Ian diving into a little bit more of the technical detail, and then should have lots of time for questions and discussion. Ian, anything else?
Yeah, sounds good. Go for it.
Cool. Awesome. So just to sort of set the stage here, in the Government of Canada, we have 2 CKAN instances that work together to provide the public-facing open data portal. We have open.canada.ca, which is CKAN alongside Drupal and a custom search sort of application that provides the public interface. Here you'll find open data sets, information resources, geospatial data, as well as federated data that we display from our provincial and territorial portals in Canada. And we have sort of custom views on certain data sets that we collect using the CKAN recombinant extension, which you'll hear a little bit more about during the presentation as well, because that was sort of a foundational piece behind our TableDesigner. Then we have the Open Government Registry, which is our publishing version, it's CKAN that is used specifically for managing open data sets. So here, this is CKAN hosted within the Government of Canada network, where about 4,000 users across about 300 different distinct organizations go to manage their open data sets. Here we can see we have, open data, but we also have a variety of other structured data collection that we do in this system through that CKAN recombinant extension that I was talking about, that you can kind of see here. Anything with that little upload icon is a recombinant based. So lots of different sort of reports and data and stuff going on in this system. Talking now a little bit about our sort of evolution with CKAN over time. We've been using CKAN for both that registry application and the public-facing portal since 2013. And got started really in the sort of typical sort of implementation, really using it as a metadata catalog. And then the recombinant extension was developed, which enables a structured data set to be managed at the row level per organization, and then combined into a single public facing data set. With this extension, we've worked with this a lot over time to add new functionality and features to support different business requirements, and have gained quite a big user group within the government of Canada for that extension. Then once the cloud came along and we were able to get CKAN hosted on the cloud, we were able to offer the file store to our users, where they can manage the actual files in addition to just metadata. Then in 2021, we adopted the data store, which folks are familiar with, giving API access to the data dictionaries, data previews, basic visualizations, converting the data set to different formats. And then sort of our latest evolution is TableDesigner, which has been just in really a sort of soft launch phase since right before Christmas. And it uses the CKAN data store as the system of record for that data. So creating the data sort of directly in the CKAN data store. Much of the same functionality for managing the data at the row level exists in TableDesigner from the recombinant extension, and we'll get a good sense of what that looks like in a bit more detail when we do the demo. And basically, sort of the takeaway here is, over time, we've gone from mostly managing metadata to an increased focus on managing the actual data itself. And then for public users, increasing the usability, findability, and reuse potential of the actual data sets when it's on the portal. All right, so some of the business drivers behind why TableDesigner was created. Firstly was our success with that recombinant extension that I'm talking about, that I've talked about. So we have millions and millions of rows of data managed in the recombinant extension, with thousands of users having contributed data to any one of these structured data types, and across hundreds of different organizations within the government of Canada. Which means that within the government of Canada, there's a fair amount of familiarity with the sort of functionality that exists there. And because of that, we get many requests from different sort of business groups to create new recombinant extensions to house a certain type of structured data. But a lot of these requests are really to manage one particular data set, unique to one organization, whereas recombinant is really designed to collect the same data set from all the organizations. So it's a little bit of a case where the functionality is great, but when you want to collect it for just one organization, we needed to come up with a new way to do that. And then the other thing is to give users an easier way to manage data over time. So we have many high-profile data sets that consist of like a large percentage of the actual usage of the Open Data Portal, where every month or every quarter, depending on the data set, the data owner is uploading a new resource just containing the data for that particular quarter or month or whatever, which isn't really the best user experience for the end data user. It means like, if they want to do analysis over time, now they have a data wrangling task ahead of them, and it can result in like a little bit of schema variations, just if you do anything 100 times manually, you're bound to, have some variation in there. So to help sort of address those two main things, TableDesigner was born. Ian, I don't know if you want to talk to this.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat. So as Patrick was saying, TableDesigner was built for these really high value data sets, particularly reference data and time series data, where it's important that you maintain data quality, you maintain the same schema over time. And it does this by enforcing the data schema within CKAN itself. Another way to maintain really good quality is to show users their data, and all of the TableDesigner resources are always visualized with the data table extension. So in cases where the validation doesn't catch something, the user seeing what they've actually uploaded might help clue them in that something is not right. Everything in TableDesigner is based on CKAN's built-in APIs. So there's no new APIs, but all of this functionality can be created through APIs using the same endpoints that you might already be familiar with if you've worked with CKAN before. The data schemas also support custom rules that include the types and the constraints. And all of this is built on Postgres. So the validation is based on what Postgres is capable of, which is a lot because Postgres is a very good, very capable database. It's the technology behind data store. And what TableDesigner does is help unleash some of that functionality for the data sets that you're going to be storing within CKAN as the primary source. Can you go to the next slide, please? So through this talk, I hope that at the end, you'll be able to understand what are the features of TableDesigner, what it can do, how it extends the data dictionary, how it extends the data table view, the Excel forms feature for bulk loading data, bulk editing data, the new DS audit extension that allows you to track who's made changes to what and where, extensions to the data API documentation that allow easier integrations with applications, new features for adding, editing, and deleting individual records and multiple records for the delete case, and the ability to add custom types and constraints. And towards the end, I'll also discuss who this feature is designed for and what are some ideal cases to use TableDesigner and some cases that maybe you would consider some other technologies. So if I can pass it back to you, Pat, for the demo, I think.
Awesome.
I don't think I have another slide.
No. So going to pray to the live demo gods here. But as we're seeing from the slide before, we're now in the Open Government Registry, which is our sort of internal publishing application of CKAN, and we are going to create one of these TableDesigner resources. So I have one pre-staged just to fall back on. Again, for the purposes of live demo mitigation, but we'll go in and create a new resource on this data set based on TableDesigner. So click over here, click Add New Resource, and let me pull up my metadata document here with all the metadata pre-staged. You'll notice here sort of one nuance to the Government of Canada is all of the free-form, free text metadata needs to be collected bilingually. So our metadata entry does get a little bit sort of verbose when we're putting in all of the different fields in English and in French. And then you'll notice here, for folks would be familiar with creating a resource where you're going to provide the data in a link format or upload a tabular data set to either use the file store or to be loaded into the data store with Xloader or Data Pusher, etc. But we have this third option now, TableDesigner, where we're going to select that. And then we'll actually use the data dictionary interface to create the different fields in the data set itself. For resource type, it'll be a data set, and it'll be CSV data. So we'll create this resource, and it is this one here. And here now we can see we are offered sort of a blank view of the data tables view, and we can start going in and adding our fields to the data set in the data dictionary tab. So the first field we're going to add is of type date. So you can see here when we create a field, the first thing we need to do is determine what data type it's going to be, and you can see the data types that we have available at the time of launch, and we'll see a couple of these throughout the demo. Then for each field, we're going to give it an ID. And now we can set the obligation. So a field can either be a primary key required field or an optional field. So this one will make it a primary key. And we'll get into some of the constraints that we're allowed to put on the data. So for this one, we'll set a minimum value for the date of November 24th of last year. And we won't set a maximum for this one. Now, again, sort of a nuance of the Government of Canada is we're going to provide the labels for the data fields and the field descriptions bilingually in this interface. And we'll add the next field, which is a choice list. This is one that we're particularly happy with, where users can just give a field of enumerated values to choose from. So we will input our line separated choices here. And again, our description. And one more field for this brief example, which will be a integer field. This one will be count. Oops. Back to set this one. This one is also a primary key. And this one is required with a minimum value of 0. Okay, so we'll save that. And now we should get a table view here with our schema for the data set configured. And we can scroll down here to our data dictionary that has all of our metadata for that dictionary inputted. And then now we can start actually putting data into the table. There's just like, well, I guess for us anyway, similar to recombinant, there's always 3 ways that the data can be managed in TableDesigner. The first one is using a web-based form. So we can just click Add Row. And now we have a nice interface where we can add a record. And we can click Save on that. And slight delay, I was scared there for a second, but no, all good. So we can see now our data is in the table view. But for more bulk entry into the table, doing it row by row in the form isn't that efficient for adding a lot of records at the same time. So we have the option to input it using a Microsoft Excel template. So I'll click Excel template, and it will download the template for me. Oops. Sorry, I just got. All right, perfect. And we can see there's actually quite a rich functionality here available in the template that we'll go over. So, sorry, just Government of Canada stuff here. Okay, so now in my template, I get a nice sort of visual indication of where to start typing. Let me maybe zoom in a little bit to make that easier for folks. I can start here on row 6 and start adding my data. Now, maybe I'm not quite sure. Hey, someone sent me this template. How do I populate it? I can click on one of the column headings, and now I get all of the data dictionary information directly in the template itself. So it's kind of like a little bit self-contained, where the documentation and the template both travel together, which is nice. So now I know, okay, I need to put in a date for that particular one. And so let's start looking at some of these. So I know it's supposed to be a date field. I put my name. Oh, all right. So one of the nice features is once I start typing in a row, it's highlighting now in darker blue the other mandatory fields that I must complete for that row to make it valid, and it's giving me if I have a table that maybe has 40 columns across, it's giving me a little header where it'll take me exactly it'll take me into which fields are required. Same with on the row, and click, and it will bring me to the nearest sort of unpopulated mandatory value. Now I can see that it's not working as I was expecting, but when it's showing up in red, that's saying that it's the wrong data type for that particular field, which is nice. It gives it a nice visual indication to the user, so that as they're populating the data in the template, they're not going to be surprised when they go to upload it into CKAN and it comes back with an error message. So this is one way that we can hope to make sure that the data is collected well from the get-go. So I have some of this already pre-done. So let me paste some of these in. Okay, perfect. So here I've pasted in just some rows in the data that I pre-did, just for ease of time. But for the choice type, you'll remember that we had one where we're enumerating the applicable values. That becomes a drop down the users can select from. Now, because I've set the observation and location as primary key. Now the template is smart enough to notice that there's a duplicate record. So it's because we have duplicates, now it's highlighting this in red. So some pretty powerful tools here to help collect the data, in a way that sets up the user for success. So if I click save on the template now, or actually let's look at a couple other ones. So for example, bicycles, it's an integer field. If I type 3.5, okay, that's not an integer. Also, I believe we set the minimum value to be 0. So if we try and put in a negative, it'll show up red. So all of those data validation constraints are being reflected in the template. Click save on that. And then now I can upload this into the system. I have two options for uploading. I can either, let me actually just get it in here. So I have two options. The first one is check for errors. This is sort of that data store upsert dry run functionality. So say, have my big quarterly report that's due, and I want to make sure that as soon as it gets the, stamp of approval from up high, that the system is going to accept it. I can, run it through that dry run, or I can submit it directly into the system now that I'm ready. So click submit, and it will give me a nice little flash message saying uploaded, and I can see now all of my records here in the table. Some other sort of interesting features here. I can select, I say, oops, 2024. This is the wrong stuff. I can edit this row, so I can click edit, and it will give me a pre-populated Excel template, just those records that I want to edit. Or I can edit directly. Oops. Or I can edit it directly using that form interface. And I think this is really sort of the best usage of the form interface, at least when you're managing quite a lot. If you notice a typo or an error, it's easy to just click one or two, have it edit in the form interface, and then save it back. So we'll call this one. This one's actually the 30th, not the 31st. And then here we can see our change reflected in the data directly. Now, I say, oops, I actually didn't mean to upload that particular one. Let me just delete that. I can also delete those records, and it will give me, hey, are you sure? Last chance. And it'll show me actually what I'm confirming that I actually do want to delete. So, okay, yes, let's go ahead and delete that particular record. And then now we can see our table view refreshed minus that particular record. In terms of demo, Ian, I'm just looking through the content, and I think, that's...
Yeah, I think that covers it. You already downloaded one of the templates that was pre-filled, but it looks the same as when you're uploading a new one with a blank template, except that the values are already there and you can edit them in place.
Yeah, I can pull that up. it's slow with our sort of lockdown secure Excel. Yeah, exactly. So as Ian was mentioning, here's the one that we clicked, edit on, and the one sort of difference is that you get the row ID that corresponds with that. Yeah. Yeah, so I think for the demo, we're pretty good. Now I think I'll turn it back over to Ian to talk to some of the remaining slides.
Yeah, so like 36, I think, is the slide that we start from.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Pat. That was a great demo, and glad to see that it didn't crash and burn on us while we're doing it.
Big win.
So next I'm going to talk about the CKAN XDS audit extension, which is an extension that we've built to work together with the table designer feature. And what this does is it extends the activity stream for data sets that have a table designer resource to show you the actual changes that were made. So what we see here is a screenshot from a vanilla CKAN. And this is on the top, an example of downloading 4 records into the Excel template and then re-uploading them with changes. And so what you see here is the actual data that was uploaded, when it was uploaded, and who actually made that change to the data. Next slide, please. At the top of, or that this is just the same thing, just scroll down a little bit, but at the top here is an example of importing the original records. And so these are like the records that Pat just showed being imported. You'll see here, though, that the activity log includes that there were 24 records upserted, but it'll only show the first 12. And this is configurable, but it's just to keep the size of the activity table to a reasonable amount so that we're not duplicating all of the data in multiple places, and especially because it's possible to upload thousands of records at a time, and that would quickly overwhelm the activity feed here. The next item in the sort of the middle of the screen here shows what it looks like when you go in and actually change a schema. So that's one thing that we didn't see, but it is possible to go in after the fact and add columns or make changes to column validation rules and all that sort of stuff while your data is still in the system. And that will appear with the DS Audit extension as an activity just like this, where it'll list all of the columns. Go to the next slide, please. And so next, I want to talk about the data API documentation. This is something that has actually recently improved in released versions of CKAN. Next slide. What we've done is we've added the buttons at the top that give code examples in 5 different languages right now. And the data API documentation that's available on every resource already comes with an example that includes the resource ID for the resource that you're looking at. But what Table Designer does is it extends that and starts and inserts actual example records from the data, so that the examples are much more likely to be something that you can just straight copy and paste and start working with. And it should be a lot easier for users when they can see not only, okay, this is the endpoint, but also here are actual values that I can fill in with the values that I want for making my integrations, whether it's searching, like in this example. Next slide, please. Or inserting and updating. Because Table Designer is using the data store in a read-write way, not just as a read-only copy of an existing Excel or CSV, we can extend the data API examples to show users how they can integrate with the data store to push data as well as just querying it. So here are a couple of examples of how to use data store upsert with either the insert or update methods. Next slide. And here's an example of how you can delete records using the API. This is very important if you're building a system where you're synchronizing data from an external system. Anytime that external system is removing data, you need to make sure that it's removed on the CKAN side as well. Next slide, please. So I think we've covered sort of the bulk of the features of TableDesigner so far. What it does is it extends the data dictionary. So it's no longer a place to just describe data that you've uploaded. You can actually build your data schemas there. You can add constraints to your data there. The data table view is an integral part of TableDesigner. It's automatically created for all data store resources, and we modify the interface to allow users to select rows for editing and deleting. The Excel Forms feature that we saw is a separate extension, but it's designed to work with TableDesigner and allows bulk loading records up to a few thousand at a time. And it also, as Pat was showing, gives you instant feedback anytime that you're missing required fields or that there's errors in the data before the data is actually uploaded. With the data table view, you can select and edit up to hundreds of records at a time as well in Excel. And this has been for Recombinant, the sort of precursor to TableDesigner, and for TableDesigner, a really important thing for our users, because Excel is sort of the natural space that they will work with their data. The data store audit extension I just showed is an extension that adds that extra information to your activity history that can tell you who has actually changed data, which is very important if you've got multiple users that are contributing data. The data API documentation extended to make it a lot easier to integrate other applications or to build visualizations by having real examples from data, which is possible because we know more about the types of what's in there. And Pat was demoing the individual add, edit, and delete features in TableDesigner. So that's automatically generated web interfaces for adding records, editing records, and deleting records with confirmation. Next slide, please. But this is the feature of TableDesigner that I'm most excited about. And this is the fact that all of those types that you saw and the constraints that you saw as we were building that new type using TableDesigner is only the beginning of what's possible. Types and constraints are completely customizable in TableDesigner. You can have a type that is backed by anything that is supported by Postgres, including composite types. If you've got PostGIS, you can have complex geospatial types. If you've got foreign data wrappers, you can have things that connect to other systems. All of the validation and data transformation is implemented with PL/SQL. So it's a full, real data programming language that you've got to be able to clean data or to validate data as it's going into the system. And because it's in Postgres, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to apply all the time. It doesn't matter how you're loading the data, if you're loading it through a web form, if you're loading it through an Excel template, or if you're loading it through an API. And when you're creating these custom forms, or these custom types and constraints, you have complete freedom to add any kind of HTML, CSS, JavaScript to build the interface on both the data dictionary side, where you're defining what that field is, and on the add and edit forms, where users are actually working on an individual record. So in the PostGIS case, for example, you could have a beautiful map that allows drawing shapes and having that data go directly into Postgres in the native types. For Excel validation, we're a little bit more limited because the Excel Forms extension will only generate templates that use Excel formulas. We don't generate templates with a more complicated language like Visual Basic or something, because, and rightly so, most users aren't going to download an Excel file and that says, "Hey, I'm going to take over your system," with all the warnings and stuff. So as long as your validation can be implemented with Excel formulas, you can also implement validation the same as all the types that you saw, where fields are highlighted red before the user actually uploads it and gets an error message. And all of this was built with the idea that sites that have particular needs for the types of data that they're collecting can easily add these types or constraints to their theme extension, or you can build a custom extension that is designed to be shared. So if you've got a library of types that you want to build that support a particular workflow and then share that with the community, that is equally available option. And really, I'm excited about what could be built on this feature, and the number of types and constraints that we have is fairly limited, because I know the specific rules that we've needed for our business case for recombinant have been extensive and very, very specific. You know, this field and this field and this field have to be that if that other date field is equal to this. So, you know, our users really, really value being able to specify things like that. So having custom types and constraints means that for your users, you can build whatever set of validation rules applies for your particular use case. So move to the next slide, please. So now briefly, who is this feature designed for? And the people that can benefit from this are really, you know, quite wide ranging. For data authors, it can be great to have a single source of truth in your CKAN instance. This lets you manage and enforce your data schema over time. So as new columns are added, columns are removed, TableDesigner can help you make those changes and migrate your data and keep all of your data together instead of having old archive data in one schema and, you know, the new data that is in another schema. For data publishers, having highest data quality is of course great, and being able to combine data from different sources for people with different abilities, including people that might be more comfortable with Excel, people that might be more comfortable using a web form, and people that might have an integration with an API with an existing system. This allows you to have a single resource where all of that stuff can come together and provide that single high quality source of truth. For data users, for users that come to CKAN and actually want this data, because it's high quality, it makes it so much easier to build visualizations, to connect data sources, because you can know that, you know, you can rely on primary keys here, you can rely on linking data there, and to have easy API documentation that you can essentially copy and paste gets them that much closer to building a visualization or building an integration with a system that they have. And in the last slide, I just talked about the benefits for developers. For developers, the ability to build these custom types and really build a data application around CKAN, data collection application around CKAN is quite rich, and as we've done with the proactive disclosure for our site. So here's some examples of great places to use TableDesigner and places that maybe it doesn't really make sense. I've hit this a number of times, but time series data, where you're adding data and you want to be able to keep the data together, you want to migrate the data over time, this is a really ideal technology. For reference data, anytime you're trying to link data and rely on it, being able to have enforced primary keys is very important so that users can actually link and can rely on this information. It can also be useful for building custom types. For many cases, we have controlled vocabularies that are, you know, decided across Government of Canada. We can build a type that comes pre-populated with that, and a user can drop it into their data set and they know that it follows the standard. And as I mentioned in the last slide, for aggregating data, when you've got data coming in from multiple different sources, lots of people are responsible for reporting on the same type of data. This type of system allows all of that stuff to be combined and normalized, validated, cleaned, and published. Some cases that TableDesigner might not fit, if you're trying to publish archive data, if you don't know the data owner for a data set, it may be difficult to clean the data enough to fit a schema that you've designed. So that might be better to leave as a regular file. If you've got an existing source of truth for your data, if the data that you're publishing is already part of an ETL pipeline where everything is generated from an existing system, deleted, and then reloaded every night, TableDesigner may just be duplicated validation that could cause an issue that you're not expecting as schemas change. But it could give you a guarantee that the schema doesn't change. So there may be a slight benefit there. And if you're publishing unstructured data, if your documents, you know, JSON, blob, that type of thing, one column in TableDesigner, I guess, could be used if you made it a really custom column with its own rules. But the main target is tabular data with lots of different columns and rules and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So where have we been? We've talked a lot about where the technology came from. It was based on recombinant, which we're now using for millions of records for publishing proactive publication data on open.canada.ca. Back in 2021, I posted a proposal and discussion for this feature on CKAN, got a lot of great feedback from the community. How could I take this idea and turn it into something that could actually be broadly usable? And so this is how we ended up with a whole set of extensions. And now, as of last year, a pull request that has the real working code that you can go and take a look at. And the plan is to hopefully this year have the feature merged into CKAN and be part of a next major release. So next slide, please. I think that's it. Yes. So if you're interested in this, if you've learned anything from this, or if you want to give some feedback, that's the link to the pull request. Please go there, try it out, add your comments, and I think we're at the end. So thank you everybody for your attention, and now would be the time for questions.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Ian and Patrick. It was really amazing presentation. Now we are opening the floor for our Q&A session. We are running a bit over time, but as you know, we are flexible with our schedule. So feel free to stay and engage in the discussion, or if you need to leave, you can catch up with the recording later. Now, let's kick off with some questions. I can see some raised hands, so let's go with the first one, who was Ajagara-san or something like that. Please go ahead. I always have trouble pronouncing your name.
Yeah, that's close enough. You can call me Aza, AZA.
Aza.
I have a couple of questions. I mean, when I thought the session is about table designing, I thought it would show a diagram, eventual design of ER diagram maybe. Is it there? I mean, is it part of the table designer where we can create a ER diagram, since you already have the key information, constraints, how tables are related? All this information is already there. Is it possible to create a ER diagram from this? Is it part of the feature, or if not, will it be an added feature later? That's my first question.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What we don't have built into the Table Designer feature as it is right now is a foreign key, which I think you would need if you're trying to generate an ER diagram. But that's something that we're looking at, sort of the best way to make an interface to allow users to fill in that type of thing. It's a little bit challenging from Excel, but on the web interface side, it would be easier to run a query. On the Excel side, we could also actually generate lists of options and include them in the template. So that's definitely on our radar, is having a standard way of doing foreign keys with Table Designer. And then once you've got that, you have all of the information that you would need, or you have a lot of the information that you would need to generate an ER diagram based on the schemas that, and how they're interconnected.
All right, thanks.
That answers your question?
Yeah, so it is currently not there, isn't it? The visual representation?
Yes, so there's nothing for making the diagrams for relationships right now, and the foreign key relationships between tables is not implemented as a feature in this pull request yet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
so the table designer is really talking about just individual database tables, and we're working towards those other more advanced features like what you're discussing.
Okay. And CKAN is a bit new to me. I know that it is an open source, but if you want to use this feature or CKAN itself, any tips on implementing this open source in our environment? Do we need a Postgres database? Do we need Linux or Windows platform or a server in AWS? How do we go about installing CKAN for our company?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that. We've got a lot of resources on CKAN.org for people that can help with installing, setting up CKAN. If you're doing it yourself, the documentation on CKAN, docs.ckan.org will step you through everything that's required. And then there's the community chat on Gitter if you need help, if you get stuck along the way, and the discussion boards on GitHub would be another good place if you're trying to do it yourself and need some help.
All right,
Yes,
thank you.
just to jump in quickly. So if you go to the website CKAN.org, there is on the main menu, you'll see support, and you have community support. So you can head straight there and you'll find many useful links.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go with the next person who's raised their hand. This is Nisheu Merlane. Please go ahead. Can you hear me? Maybe I didn't say your name correctly. Apologize for that. Okay, while Nisheu is thinking or unmuting themselves, let's see what's going on in the chat.
I think I saw the question that the person said they're in another meeting, so they can't speak. If you identifiers can be one row or many. So the unique identifiers are defined on the fields, and in the demonstration we had multiple fields that are part of a unique identifier, or in the database sense a composite primary key. So that is supported out of the box with this feature.
Great. Let's try with another question from Oleg, but I think he left already. But anyways, the Excel template looks slick. Does it work in LibreOffice as well? Or have you thought about web-based spreadsheet?
Yes, so we built this to generate Excel templates because it's kind of the standard. Everybody, within Government of Canada, everybody's got a copy of Excel anyway, but for my development, I'm on Linux, so I'm using LibreOffice to do all of the same sorts of things. It works just fine. You have to, I think, shift click on links instead of clicking them like you do in Excel. But all of the links jumping around, the formulas, everything works just the same. It should also work just the same in Google Sheets, although I haven't tested that. But I think Google Sheets has very good compatibility with Excel, especially because we're using very basic functionality. It's simple formulas and formatting on the cells that is required.
Perfect. I'm sure Oleg will watch the recording, so he will know. Okay, I can see a question from Joe for the audit extension. Does it also show the old value if a row was updated?
That would be really nice, but no, not yet. The DS audit extension is very simple at the moment, and it will copy the data through that was sent. If you would like to extend that to query the data before the change is made, so that the information about exactly what change happened is part of the audit, that's definitely possible with a little bit of Python code. It will slow down creating that record a little bit, and maybe if you've got thousands of records that you're loading at a time, that might be a consideration, but it's definitely possible, just not implemented yet.
Okay, Joe is thumbing up. Stephen, maybe you can go ahead directly. We all love your voice.
Sure.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And Stephen, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Joe. Okay.
So did you say me or Joel, or did I get confused? I don't know. Now I'm confused.
I think we love both of your voices. So
Yes.
either.
I was about to say, but let's go with Stephen first and then Joe. Right?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, in my own world. Yeah, the 2 points I just put into the chat. One is just around access to the features themselves. CKAN, management of data sets at the editor level or admin level, I guess would naturally get the table designer feature, but you might in an organization not really want everyone to design the table, especially maybe making modifications to an existing schema. So just a couple of words on how you think that might be implemented. And then the second one is kind of similar, just when there are things being submitted for upload or insert, can they be staged? How do you manage that kind of maybe draft approval process?
Yeah, so to the first one, we've definitely thought about that. We've considered making the normal user account have some option to have privileges elevated enough so that they can add and update records, but not change the schema. And I think that's going to be based on site-by-site basis, whether you would want to have maybe a field at the data set level to say these are users that are allowed to put data into this data set, or if you would want something system-wide where you've got a different user classification for users that can upload data into these but not actually change the schema. So that's definitely something we've been thinking about. And the second question, I've forgotten, but I know we're thinking about that one as well too. Could you repeat that for me?
It was just kind of like draft changes.
Oh yes, draft changes. So something that we have done for some of our proactive disclosure types is to have columns that will indicate whether this is data that is going to be published, because we have a workflow that will take the data that's in the registry, transform it before it's actually published to the portal. So if you have a single CKAN instance, then that might not solve the issue. If you had to have a place to draft some records, maybe you would create a separate data set that is marked private with the same schema, and then you can load the data into there and copy it over to publish it as sort of a quick and dirty way of doing it. But that's how we deal with the sort of publishing individual records right now, is with an extra column to control that.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think it just struck me. I remember Sergey wrote some stuff around that. I think he called it shards or something like that, which is like storage of ephemeral metadata stuff. And I know that came out of when he was maybe mapping metadata from one schema to another and doing draft stuff and approval processes. But yeah, cool.
Thanks. Now, Joe, you can show us your voice.
Thank you. So yes, Ian. So I think we kind of discussed this. One use case we're thinking of is using TableDesigner to upload bulk metadata for packages, because then we can use the validation rules to make sure the controlled vocabularies for, say, certain metadata fields are populated properly, and then use that uploaded TableDesigner data store table then to update the metadata inside CKAN. Is that like is that a valid use case, or you think there's a better way to do that?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. One issue I could see is resources. You'll have multiple resources per data set. So if you've got multiple fields, then it might be hard to represent in a single table to apply the rules to. But that's very interesting. I mean, I guess you could build it to do whatever type of validation you need for your particular case, as long as it looks table-like when it's being loaded.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I can't hear you, Joanna, if you're talking.
Jesus, I muted. I'm sorry. So, yeah, I'll start from the beginning. So I can see Sanye is still here. I'm not sure if his question is still relevant. Maybe if you can hear us and if you can speak, you can voice your question. And I can see Michael wrote a comment that we've implemented Excel upload for metadata, but use the harvester system for it. That's a comment. Okay, are there any other questions that we haven't addressed? Access to the slides, yes. Ian and Patrick will send the presentation to me, and now put the links in the meeting notes document and also under the video when we upload it on YouTube. so you'll have access to the slides. Okay, let's give 20 seconds for questions. I'm skimming through the chat now, just to make sure that we've addressed all questions. There is a lot of things from AI too, so I need to be very careful not to miss something.
Or to anger the AI. You don't want that.
No. I think we covered everything. Yeah. Okay, so if there are no other questions, then I would say maybe we should go to closing. Yes. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, you can still ask a question, but then you'll need to raise your hand because I'm not going to follow the chat anymore, okay? All right, guys, so that's a wrap for our first CKAN Monthly Live for 2024. I think it was a really great start. And big shout out to Ian and Patrick. Great development and very truly inspiring. Now we are on the lookout for engaging CKAN related projects and topics for our new year sessions. So if you have an interesting CKAN project or some topic you're passionate about, please apply. You can just fill out the form that you see on screen. You can write an email to me, up to you. But yeah, we are really looking forward to your interesting projects. You can also suggest a topic in our file, like, you know, the meeting notes document. This is our single source of truth. There is a link to a file where you can suggest topics and speakers. So you can go ahead and do that there. Don't forget to subscribe for our newsletter. You can do that in the link that you see on screen, on our website, and also in LinkedIn. So yeah, if you want to stay in the loop, subscribe. If you want to get involved, if you're passionate about CKAN, there is a community page. You can go to CKAN.org/community, and you'll find many different links there. There are dev meetings which happen every Tuesday and Thursday. They're open for all, and you can just join the weekly meetings. If you need help, you can go to Stack Overflow. Treasures of wisdom there. Also our guitar chat, I would say even more treasures of wisdom, and then you have real-time support. You can go to GitHub discussions. You can post your burning questions and requests there. If you found a bug. What? Oh, okay, you're right. Flakes, not shards. Ian, you have a comment from Steven. CKAN next flakes. Okay. Yeah, and if for security related questions, you can shoot an email to security@ckan.org. Next. yeah, this is not goodbye. So this is see you soon. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, our YouTube channel. You can see all the links on the screen. They're all available on our website and in our meeting notes document. So I think I'm done with my closing words. Thank you for joining today.